Let's go through our 16 starts and sits for week 1. It is finally here. We're finally doing it. Just all the excitement. I just can't handle it, Ty. So why don't you start us off? We're going to start with the quarterback position, then running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. So give us your start of the week at the quarterback position.
This isn't necessarily a guy that I'm telling you to force into your lineup, but if you are kind of, out of options, Matthew Stafford is a great option. Okay. This Detroit Los Angeles Rams game is one of the highest projected point total games of the week. Stafford, again, you could say it's revenge game 2.0 after losing to the Lions in the playoffs last year, where, just as a reminder, Stafford put up 22 fantasy points against the Lions, and the Lions, yes, they've added some talent to their defense. It's not exactly, I'm not expecting this Detroit defense to, be miles better than what they were last year. And really, when it came to the passing game, they were pretty much Swiss cheese. It was really their offense that kind of bailed them out more times than not in games last year. So Matt Stafford, revenge game 2.0, with a fully healthy Cooper Kupp, with Puka Nacua ready to go. Kyron Williams is going to be ready to go. This offense is coming in full strength, and I cannot wait to watch this game because, again, everyone is predicting a shootout, and I can't help but believe that it's going to be as well.
Yeah, it's crazy to me too. Like you said, like they lost in the playoffs. That the Rams were a playoff team last year, right? I just felt like it was such a down year for them, and they were 10-7 in the wild card spot. So like that's just wild to me to think back and be like, oh shoot, this team, they performed last year and they felt like it was kind of a downer. But yeah, there's just if this Rams team is going to be as good as we think they are, this is the game they're going to start off showing it. Obviously, the running back situation is nuts right now because you got Corum at kick returner, Kyron at punt returner. So it's probably going to be the Ronnie Rivers show. No, I'm just kidding. That is a joke. Do not start Ronnie Rivers. Do not take that seriously.
He's a DFS long shot. That's what he is.
Exactly. And to go off Stafford, I actually have as my start the other quarterback in that game, Jared Goff. And I know like sleeper projections aren't everything, but I was shocked. They have Jared Goff projected as the 8th highest scoring quarterback this week in week 1, which was wild to me. Like, obviously, I think Jared Goff's going to do well. He's my start of the week, but eighth best is pretty good. And that has a lot to do with, like Ty said, it's supposed to be a high scoring game. Vegas has him at 51 for the over under. That's highest of the week. I think next closest is Minnesota, New York at 48.5.
I think it's I was looking at this earlier. I thought it was no, I'm gonna confirm this. It's gonna bug me if I don't get this.
Ty will get back to us, but Jared Goff, they're playing at home, and that is something huge to remember. And if you don't believe me that that's big, let me read you the home and road stats for Goff last year. At home, 70% completion percentage for 280 yards, 2.4 touchdowns a game, and 0.6 interceptions. On the road, 64% completion percentage, so down 6 points, 259 yards, down 21 points, and only 1.2 touchdowns per game and 0.6 interceptions. So obviously those splits are very different. And then on the defensive side for the Rams, they just traded Ernest Jones, who, it's not like he's not exactly like a household name by any means, but when you're trading a middle line, inside linebacker, that can do especially this late in the offseason, that can, shake up your offense or defense. And then obviously losing Aaron Donald. He is the single most irreplaceable player of our generation on the defensive side of the ball, and he's just gone. So that pass rush is going to feel a little bit different. But yeah, did you find our clarification on the highest over-unders after I misspoke?
It's Packers Eagles at 49.5. And I don't want to throw you under the bus, but Vikings Giants is nowhere close.
Where did I get that from then? I'm a clown.
Maybe it's your purple and yellow tinted glasses there.
No kidding. I don't know where I heard that. I am just absolutely a clown for that, which I don't even know why I would think it. It's Daniel Jones versus Sam Darnold. It's not like we got 2 great quarterbacks late. I don't know. So yeah.
It's because you're so excited for week 1. You're so excited for football that
yeah, I'm just saying that. No, I'm not just saying things. I just said that though. So that was awful. All right, Ty, before your sit, we just want to let you guys know, like, we are coming out 3 podcast episodes every single week on the audio podcast over Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on the YouTube channel. So we want to make sure that you guys are subscribed with those notifications on so you don't miss it, because I'm just going to be honest. We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to give you a lot of useful information because we want you to win your leagues just the same as we want to win our leagues. So make sure you hit the subscribe buttons. Make sure you turn on those notifications. But Ty, who is your sit at the quarterback position?
It is Mr. Hyped, number one overall pick himself. It's Caleb Williams. I get that it's a really, really good situation for Caleb Williams in Chicago, right? You've got weapons galore. You have got a solid offensive line in front of you. Call it give the rookie a week or two until you know exactly what you're getting out of the rookie in fantasy. At least you could say it like that. I just see it for this week. Not many people are going to put not many people will respect this Tennessee defensive matchup that he's going up against. This Tennessee defense got a major overhaul this offseason. They drafted Rhamondre Sweat in the second round. And if you don't remember Rhamondre Sweat, he was the giant running around on the football field during Senior Bowl and the combine and stuff. He's an athletic freak, and you're going to put him on the defensive line with All-Pro Jeffrey Simmons. Then you've got pass rushers and Harold Landry and Arden Key. But then remember Ernest Jones that Cam just brought up? Yeah, Tennessee traded for him, right? So the linebackers are upgraded, but the biggest upgrade came in the secondary, okay? Tennessee not only went out and signed Chidobe Awuzie from Cincinnati, who was their number one corner for the past 4 years. They went out and traded for L'Jarius Sneed from the Kansas City Chiefs, who was virtually a lockdown, no roads open kind of corner last year for Kansas City. And now he makes his way to Tennessee. In this Shane Waldron offense, where we are likely going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets, 2 wide receiver sets as well, though whoever's on the field for the Bears is going to have a tough matchup against those corners. Okay. This is just one of those matchups where you think it's a decent matchup going up against Tennessee. But I'm telling you, with all of the upgrades that they have made, this is not the week. Give it a week or two just to see what you're going to get out of Caleb Williams and what this Chicago offense will look like. And that may or may not go the same for the wide receivers outside of DJ Moore. Just wait and see what the Chicago offense is going to look like. I just don't think it's the right matchup this week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's his first matchup. Like you said, it's going to be a tougher matchup. Nobody really went out like Tennessee this offseason. I mean, they just bought some big name players, spent money on both sides of the ball, right? Calvin Ridley, we talked about in the last episode. Tony Pollard, too, they brought in. So they're kind of pushing all the chips in because they brought in some veterans. It wasn't like young guys they brought in. They're like, hey, we're going to go try to win some games. And then for Caleb, too, right? Your first game. And Keenan Allen's been battling a foot injury, right? He said, sounds like he should be, good to go, but that's just less reps you've had with Keenan Allen. That's just less, it's a little more uncertainty for Keenan Allen being on the field. So you kind of add all of those together, and it's like, if you got a pivot option, and that's what I want to say with both quarterbacks and tight ends, right? If your pivot option is Russell Wilson, don't pivot from Caleb Williams or the guy I'm about to talk about, right? This is if you have a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Herbert, right? That is similar enough that you can move off to them, or like a Tua as well. Like guys who, there may not be the best names, but they're good pivot options. But my guy is Mr. Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers. And obviously he's just getting Ayuk, just getting CMC, and just getting Trent Williams back at practice. So this team, this is going to take a little bit more time maybe to get to a good start this season. But the issue is, but at the same time, I do recognize they played together last year. The system hasn't changed, right? They're going to be fine. It's going to be, I think it might just take a little bit of time. And then they're playing a great Jets defense, who I think is a top 5 unit in the league, secondary, front seven. I think all around they're very good. Last year they were, middle of the pack fantasy wise, but that's what happens when you have as bad of an offense as they did, right? They were worse in third down conversion rate. They were 5% worse than the Panthers, who were 31st in the league. Panthers were at 30%. They were at 25%. So they're only converting, a third down on a fourth of their attempts, which just means this defense was on the field a ton last year. So not great matchups for Caleb, not great matchups for Brock Purdy. So we would stay away if you have the option to stay away, right? That's the caveat we're going to put. Same thing for the tight end position, which we'll talk about later. But Tyler, let's get into the meat potatoes of this. Let's start talking some running backs. Who should the people be looking to start at the running back position?
My first and my start, I should say, Raheem Mostert. Because why wouldn't you? I mean, Mostert was kind of an awkward one this year in drafts just because he was going in a range where you're not spending the capital that automatically puts him into your lineup, but you're taking him as like a running back 3 as a flex in some of your deeper leagues and stuff like that. But again, it's a simple, why wouldn't you, right? Like, don't get cute with this. Yes, Devon Achane will be involved. Mostert will still be getting a decent workload, and being in this Miami offense, like, you never know when either Achane or Mostert can pop. And that's really the reason why you need to keep Mostert in your lineup until something changes. Like, until further notice, Raheem Mostert should still be the 1A and Mostert will be the 1B. Don't be surprised if their snap shares are, 50-50, 55-45, if they were much closer than what they were last year. But again, being in this Miami offense, any of these running backs could pop off at any moment, right? So I don't necessarily even think too that Mostert is necessarily going to like cost you your week. And if it does, it's because something drastic happened in that Miami offense, right? So I think, again, don't get cute with it. Put Mostert in your lineup. You can play him as a flex. If you're, kind of looking at him amongst your other running back options, you can put him in as your running back 2. I think Mostert is, again, a guy that you just don't get cute with it and just put him in your lineup.
Yeah, if you're willing to start David Montgomery, you should be more than willing to start Raheem Mostert, right? Because they're going to probably be in similar roles this season. He's probably a 50-50 shot to score a touchdown if he has between 60 and 100 yards on the ground, which he could easily do on only like 15 carries, because that's the way this Miami offense, just runs. You could be you're looking at between 12 and potentially 18 points or 16 points. So it's just. And like you said, Mostert, you didn't draft him to be your running back 1. You probably didn't even draft him to be your running back 2, right? He's probably, fringe running back 2, maybe even flex consideration. So like if, you're not counting on him for 20 points, but he'll be consistent enough to not, cost you a week. And, he's got the touchdown upside to really, really propel you forward. My guy also, I think, has some pretty decent touchdown upside. At least he has over his career, and it's James Conner. And I understand if you're going, well, James Conner's playing the Buffalo Bills, because we have this thought that the Buffalo Bills are just this great defense because they have been. And no, I don't think they're falling apart this season, but they've lost some key pieces. Matt Milano's still out, which is a really big part of this, right? We're talking about the middle of the defense again. Him being out, your sideline to sideline guy hurts. So I don't think they're like terrible, but I think they're more of a middle of the pack defense. And if you drafted James Conner, this is the time of year to play him, because right now he's not really at risk of losing the starting job to Trey Benson. But we start getting in week 10, week 11, Benson has a couple of good games, Conner starts getting dinged up. That's when he could lose it, so you're not waiting on Conner. If you've drafted Conner, this is the week to start him. This is a team, that just I think is going to be pretty good. I think the Cardinals are going to be in a lot more high scoring games, be around the red zone. Conner's, great with, receiving the ball. So I think you just add all that together. And this is the week where if you have James Conner, he should be in your lineup. Ty, before our sits, the people need to know we got a giveaway going on right now, and I don't want them to miss out on it. We're drawing names after week 1 is over. But we're giving away 5 different things because we hit 300,000 followers on TikTok and 500,000 followers across all social media platforms. And so as a thank you to you guys, we're giving away a copy of Madden 25, NCAA 25, a Jalen Waddle signed jersey, a $100 Visa gift card, and a jersey of the winner's choice. And all you have to do is sign up in our Discord, which you can find down below in this video, which is free. And it'll have our weekly rankings out there. So if you're like, hey, I like the starts and sits, but you didn't talk about my guy, go check out our weekly rankings in that Discord and get signed up for the giveaway. I don't know about you, Ty, but that sounds like a pretty neat deal for these guys.
It is. Why wouldn't you? Honestly,
It's-
and it's not just weekly rankings. You get starts and sits chat. You get a trade advice chat. You get a waiver wire chat. Like they're all that you need, all the tools that you need to make it the proper adjustments in season. It's all there for you on the Discord.
I mean, what more can we say? But join.
What
Yeah,
more
there's
could
no
we
reason.
give you?
There's no reason not to join at this point. All right, we'll move off our soapbox and we'll move on to our sits at the running back position. Ty, who is your sit at the running back position this week?
It's Jerome Ford, who finds himself really as the clear back in Cleveland. Maybe not really, though. The team did bring back Deontay Foreman, and I think that kind of went under the radar to a lot of people. And so they saw Foreman amongst the cuts, coming out of training camp for Cleveland, and they're like, oh, it is Jerome Ford season. And then they brought Deontay Foreman back. So while it could still be Jerome Ford in that backfield, right? It could be the majority share to Ford still. There's a slight chance that it isn't at this point. And then you take that and you then see, oh man, they're going up against the Cowboys. They're going up against the Dallas Cowboys, who gave up the 5th least fantasy points to running backs last year. Yes, it's a different Dallas defense. Dan Quinn is now in Washington, and Mike Zimmer is now calling the shots on this defense. This defense is still very, very talented. I think Jerome Ford is someone, in kind of the opposite way too, right? How I was saying with Raheem Mostert, don't get cute with it. Jerome Ford is also the same. Don't get cute with it. And don't force him into your lineup. This just isn't the right matchup. I think there are weeks ahead where Ford can benefit with the matchup. This is just not that week.
Yeah, and it's, you bring up Mike Zimmer, and he wasn't the best, the greatest head coach, especially at the end of his tenure. But the dude had some great defenses in Minnesota. So, you lose Dan Quinn, but you bring in a guy who's probably going to call, a similarly leveled defense to what Dan Quinn was down there. And like you said, I mean, it just is, you're probably going to have better options for where you drafted Jerome Ford, that it's not worth trying to, fit him in over somebody else this week. My sit of the week is Rhamondre Stevenson. And I do want to say, Rhamondre Stevenson, you probably had to draft as your running back too. So if you don't have other good options, and I think that goes for all these starts and sits. If your next best option is, I don't know, J.K. Dobbins this week, no hate on J.K. Dobbins, but if it's J.K. Dobbins, then yeah, stick with Rhamondre Stevenson, right? We're not telling you, you can't play him. It's just you probably more than likely, if you drafted a good team, not take shots at anyone, have better options on your team. And the reason I would say sit Rhamondre Stevenson, Patriots are being given by Vegas 16.5 points this week. That's disgusting. That's barely 2 touchdowns, right? I mean, they're not expected to score any points, and you can't really blame Vegas. It's Jacoby Brissett, a bunch of young receivers who have proven nothing in the NFL, with an offensive line that has not figured out how to work together at all. If you were going to not trust an offensive line in the NFL, Patriots would probably be at the top of that list. If I'm I'm going to stand behind one offensive line for $50,000, if I don't get sacked, I win the $50,000. Patriots would be at the bottom of that list. And on top of that, right, because they're not going to score many points, so not a lot of touchdown opportunities. They're not going to run the ball a ton. Antonio Gibson's in town, and he's going to be a pest this year for Rhamondre Stevenson, especially in negative game scripts, which they're going to be in a lot, especially in this game against the Bengals. So I just don't see the upside for Rhamondre, and I see a lot of downside where you could have a week where you're just like, I got 6 points out of Rhamondre this week. That is very well within the realm of possibilities for Rhamondre in week 1.
Yeah, it's just a matter of it may be better off to just kind of stay away from the teams that we are not projecting to be super efficient or put up a ton of points on the year, just to see what these offenses will look like. Patriots are kind of the prime example. There really isn't a wide receiver. There isn't a tight end. I think some people may look at Hunter Henry and be like, oh, it's kind of a sneaky guy. It's just give it a week. I think the lesson that I think needs to be at least mentioned Hurd, whatever. You don't win your fantasy league on the first week of the season. Okay. The first 2 weeks really of the season are really just learning about what's happening in the league. Okay. We all have our predictions. We all have our projections of what's going to happen, but you need to adjust based on what we see right out the gate. So again, guys like Rhamondre, maybe even guys on the Panthers, right? Like some of those kind of like not so great offenses, just give it a week. Again, there is no rush. It's just 1 week.
Yeah, for sure. And like we always say, draft good players and good teams. Try to stay away from as much as you can playing mediocre players on bad teams. Like, right. Like, I mean, Rhamondre is a decent starting running back. He's not in that upper echelon of players, right? He's not he's not an elite running back by any means. He's not terrible, but he's on a bad offense right now. And that's just, that's just the reality. All right, before we head on over to the wide receivers, let's hear a word from our friends over at Underdog Fantasy.
Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100.
And we're back. It's been a while since I've tried it, so I just was like, hey, you know what? We're going to give it the good old college try. And we're back with some wide receivers and Ty. This might be the first time we've ever talked about this guy as a start at the wide receiver position. So why don't you start us off here at the wide receiver position? I said wide receiver
Jaxon,
like 15 times.
Yeah,
right
you did.
Sorry. Like that was.
I hope
but,
people understand.
Yes, we are talking about wide receivers right now. This is the wide receiver
Number 6.
This guy is a wide receiver. All right, up to you.
Number 7. This is Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I think I don't necessarily think like in 8-man, 10-man leagues that you're going to force JSN into your lineup, but I was kind of looking at this earlier. I was like, I have DK Metcalf on one of my teams, but I also have Chris Godwin, and it's a bit of a deeper league. So I'm like, you know what? I don't like the matchup for DK. I'm going to put in Chris Godwin just because I think they're close enough in how they could finish this week that it's not going to, be completely destructive, if that makes sense. So when I'm talking about Jaxon Smith-Njigba as a start, I'm not saying like, hey, if you picked up Rashee Rice as your flex, bench Rashee Rice for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. That's not what I'm saying at all. All I'm saying with Jaxon Smith-Njigba is that there is some intrigue to JSN, at least to build upon this first week. Okay. Like I said, DK Metcalf, I moved him out of my lineup in one of my weeks because I saw his matchup against Patrick Surtain, and I said, yikes, I'm not playing DK Metcalf. With Surtain focused so much on DK Metcalf, and really also knowing that there is little to no like big name talent in this Denver secondary outside of Patrick Surtain, that gives me uber confidence in Jaxon Smith-Njigba to kind of step up as, to be the guy in that wide receiver room. Tyler Lockett is supposed to play. He's still there, but he has missed the last 2 weeks with an undisclosed leg injury, which I'm sorry, if we're going into the season with an undisclosed leg injury, I do not have a great feeling about that. So I think JSN can really step up for Seattle this week. And again, with a Ryan Grubb offense that we have all been super excited to see, that's going to be much more pass friendly, pass happy. I like JSN as kind of a sneaky, Again, I don't know if there's a way that you can fit him into your lineups, but for those of you playing DFS, the JSN's a great sneaky option for you.
For sure. And I think JSN's tough for a lot of people, right? Because he's kind of in this like weird, tier. So let me ask you let me give you a couple names and you tell me if you'd start JSN or them. Let's start with Jameson Williams.
Oh, JSN for sure.
Rome Odunze.
JSN.
JSN. D-Hop.
JSN.
Cortland Sutton.
JSN.
Keenan Allen.
JSN.
Jayden Reed.
JSN.
Xavier Worthy.
This one's interesting.
Yeah. And so that's kind of where I figured your line is right around here.
Because Worthy's got some, for whatever reason, sneaky intrigue just because Hollywood Brown is going to be out and it's Kansas City, and you're like, well, I don't know, maybe there's something there. So it's a matter of just like, I want to like reference your tweet the other day of like, how many of you like to take a risk and play your Thursday night player in your flex spot instead of your position spots, right? Like that, it's a matter of like how risky you want to get, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with either of them. My personal leaning would still be JSN, but that's just because like you guys know me, as I'm not the biggest Xavier Worthy fan.
For sure. And that's like you said, you don't need to try to win your week with one player in week one, but it'd be kind of fun to do it on opening night with Xavier Worthy. So I don't blame you there. Like if they're, being in that Chiefs offense, he could for sure hit 100 yards, 2 tutties on like 3 catches. Like that is for sure within the range of outcomes. But he could also have 1 catch for 5 yards and see the field for 20% of the time, like Sky Moore. So you just never know what's going to happen with that Kansas City offense. But the intrigue is definitely there. My guy, you were actually talking about, I thought you were going to like really cut yours short or just segue into mine, but it's Chris Godwin. And we've talked about him a lot recently. And Ty actually got really spicy on a take yesterday saying he's going to outscore Mike Evans, which
whoa. I need you to rephrase that.
He could. That is
I'm not saying you will.
That was one of his bold takes, which I actually, agreed with that bold take. I thought that was one of the most intriguing ones, one that we really see, kind of a path to. We're both still taking Mike Evans ahead of Chris Godwin in drafts. We're still valuing, but it is there. And a lot of it has to do with an increased role in the slot. A lot of it has to do with touchdowns haven't bounced his way the last couple of years. Touchdowns bounce his way, these next couple of years with Liam Cohen in town, and we could see a great year from Chris Godwin. And the other reason I want to start Chris Godwin this week, he's playing the Commanders. You know who is the worst defense against the pass last year in the entire NFL? The Washington Commanders. And it was not close. They were terrible. Like, I mean, that's where we need Charles Barkley right there. Terrible. They were brutal. And
I'm muted. I'm sorry.
Tyler.
I'm muted. I was just gonna say we need to get the Commanders like music video drop in for this too. You know what I'm talking about? Like, who are we? The Commanders.
Oh, yes. There we go. I see it. I see it now. I see. Well, after our little technical difficulties there with Tyler, no, but it's that kind of just sums up the Commanders. It's just brutal. They're bottom 10 ever receiving stat and gave the 5th most points to wide receivers in the slot, and they did nothing to fix it. So, okay, I mean they made minimal additions, but yeah, no, they didn't actually address anything for this season that's going to change their outcomes. See, I would start Chris Godwin with complete confidence, and like Tyler said, he's starting him over DK Metcalf this week. So that should just show you our confidence level in Chris Godwin. But we're not. Oh.
I was just going to say, because I have the option to bench DK. Like normally I would play DK if I didn't have a Chris Godwin with this matchup. Okay. Yes. That caveat needs to be thrown in there.
This is a Chris Godwin tweet, not a DK Metcalf tweet. Your sit of the week, though, you don't have much confidence in. And there's a couple reasons for that, Ty. So who is your sit of the week?
My sit of the week is George Pickens. And the first reason is Arthur Smith. And the second reason is AJ Terrell. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. We can move it on to your sit. I'm kidding. Seriously, like I don't have you mentioned right before we started recording, like how funny would it be if Arthur Smith walked into Atlanta and just said like, oh, you wanted me to throw the ball more? Here we go. Russell Wilson's going to throw the ball 50 times, right? And like Pickens like gets like 15 targets or something like that. Like, as funny as that would be, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Arthur Smith is going to be like, look what I can do with the run game here in Pittsburgh that I couldn't do in Atlanta for whatever the reason, because you literally have Bijan Robinson, but whatever. The dude is just petty. So I don't trust Arthur Smith. And then the fact too that George Pickens is going to draw AJ Terrell in his coverage matchup this week. I just don't like that. AJ Terrell's a very, very, very good corner, got paid like one this offseason. I think if you've got a Chris Godwin, if you've got a JSN and George Pickens, play Godwin or JSN over George Pickens this week.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I've been on a JSN throughout the entire offseason. Now he's, got AJ Terrell, probably shadowing pretty much the whole game. And that's going to be the hard thing with George Pickens too, right? You got to deal with Arthur Smith, but then you also got to deal with, there's not another threat on this offense. There just isn't, like, at all. Like, you have Najee and Jalen Warren, but especially in the receiving game, there's really no other threat. And so he's going to draw the cornerback one in every matchup they're in. And their teams are just going to blanket cover him. And I don't know if he's a good enough wide receiver that he's going to be able to, break out of being, having a guy safety above him the entire time with the cornerback one on him. So I agree. I'd stay away from the guy. I'd stay away from is Jayden Reed this week. And I know there's a lot of Jayden Reed fans out there, but let's be honest. He's third on the depth chart in Green Bay right now. Do I think he's the third best wide receiver? Do I think he's the third best fantasy wide receiver? Not necessarily, but he is third, which means it's going to flow similarly to last season, where he really only plays in 11 personnel because the Packers view him as strictly a slot wide receiver. And Packers only played 11 personnel 63% of the time last year. So that means he's probably going to be only on the field for less than 70% of snaps.
Just for context, 63% is bottom half of the league.
Yes, it is.
It sounds like a lot. It's not.
Yeah. The Rams ran 11 personnel, which is just this is not like, does not reflect the rest of the league. They ran it 91% of the time last year, which is just ridiculous. I mean, they were just, no one else does it like that. That was just Sean McVay, but that's a DeMarcus Robinson tweet for you. But but so he's going to mainly play the slot. And I know what you're probably saying, oh, but you just said start Chris Godwin. He's going to, have a lot of room, he's going to play in the slot a lot. Chris Godwin's not exclusively a slot, and he's going to be out there in two wide receiver sets. Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson are going to be out there in two wide receiver sets for the Packers, not Jayden Reed. That's the big difference. And then the Eagles gave the fourth least amount of points to the slot position last year. So you got a tough matchup, at the position, and you're not going to play a ton of as many snaps as a lot of these other guys. I'm just staying away from Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed this week. Yeah.
So I will say, like, Green Bay, the wide receivers for Green Bay, they feel like another one of these, like, you probably shouldn't play any of them just to see what it's like in week one. But that being said, Romeo Doubs is dealing with a hand injury. I think it is a hand injury. So if he doesn't play, like, then there may be some injury for Jayden Reed and Christian Watson. But the other side of this too is the fact that, like, I think the Philadelphia defense is going to be better too. Like, yeah, they were pretty good to slot wide receivers last year, but they were pretty leaky everywhere else. I think everything is going to get patched up a little bit this year with Vic Fangio now calling the shots on defense and them adding to the secondary. Like, yeah, Darius Slay is still there. They went out and got Quinyon Mitchell. Like, the Eagles defense is going to be a lot better than it was last year.
No, I agree. And the other thing too, like, even if Romeo Doubs misses time, that happened last year. And Jayden Reed didn't bump up playing time. Dontavian Wicks slid in and took that role.
Correct.
So that's something to be aware of as well. And now let's get down and dirty with some tight ends. Ty, we got some tight ends that are gross. Both went outside of the top 25 drafted tight ends. So these are if you're streaming a tight end this week, right? If you've got a top 9 guy, you're not touching these guys, right? If you drafted a tight end before round 12, don't worry about what we're saying for these guys. But if you're one of the guys that drafts like I typically do, where you punt on tight end, actually this year I've kind of changed my ways a little bit, but if you punt on tight end, these two guys would be guys to put in your lineup.
Yeah, these are your DFS dart throws too, if you're trying to save money at the tight end spot so you can spend elsewhere. Mine is Zach Ertz. Yep. I have jokingly called him the drug I can't quit in our dynasty league because
But it's not a joke.
I have rostered Zach Ertz probably 3 times as much as anyone else in the league. I don't know what it is about Zach Ertz, man. I just think that he's going to have a bigger role than people perceive in this Washington offense, because outside of Terry McLaurin, yeah, we're looking at Olamide Zaccheaus and we're looking at Luke McCaffrey as the unofficial starters the unofficial starters on their unofficial depth chart. That came out on Wednesday. But like Cam said, like, if you're somehow streaming tight ends right out of the gate in week 1, or hey, if you're the Kyle Pitts manager who's dealing with his hamstring injury, Zach Ertz might be your guy to stream then, just to have an insurance. I think Zach Ertz will be great. Tampa Bay allowed the second most points to the position last year. There has been really like no change on that Tampa defense as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to fact check myself because maybe I'm totally oblivious to somebody that they added, but like, they lost Devin White. Devin White was, part 1 of 2 with Levante David as the premier linebackers in that defense, and now he's in Philly. So they really didn't like add much to that defense. I think Zach Ertz is a fine streaming option, fine backup plan if you're, if you're growing impatient with the Kyle Pitts news.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I'm not going to add much more. But, Ben Sinnott was really the reason that people were worried about Zach Ertz this year, right? That we were pushing him. He's listed as the tight end 3 on the depth chart. He's probably going to be similar to traditional tight ends, where it takes them a full year to get integrated into the offense. So if Zach Ertz is starting and Todd Bowles, is going to send a ton of pressure. I don't know. It's been rough for me this episode. I'm just like so pumped up on adrenaline that I'm just can't even speak. Todd Bowles sends pressure, especially against young QBs. That's his way. Jaden Daniels, he's either going to run or look for a safety blanket, and Zach Ertz is probably going to be that guy. My start of the week is Colby Parkinson. He has been talked about a ton by Lucas and Tyler, so I guess it's my turn to bring him up.
It's about time.
we talked about this matchup with the quarterbacks. It's going to be a high-scoring affair. So it's just kind of finding a way to get a piece of that. Ty's brought it up multiple times. This team tried to trade for Brock Bowers. Is Colby Parkinson Brock Bowers? No, but it's showing they want to use the tight end position more this season. Tyler Higbee's still dealing, recovering from an injury. And Detroit gave up the 8th most points to the tight end position last season. So, it's, that's it's gross. It's gross, but if you're streaming a tight end, or like Ty said, if you're in that DFS and hey, I'm spending all my money on Tyreek Hill and I'm on Ross St. Brown this week, and you need something real cheap, Colby Parkinson might be the answer. So Ty, that was really, really gross. Now we're talking tight end sits. So these are guys. Let me just explain how hard it is to find tight end sits, because you have to find one of the not like 12 tight ends who are actually, viable starting options on a week, and pick the 1 or 2 that's like, you know what, you're not actually going to be good. So it's like your Pickens are so slim already, and then you got to be like, I don't actually watch you. So it's just kind of gross, but let's hear yours.
It's Dalton Schultz, who last year was a decent little piece in your team, especially if you didn't have one of the top 5 guys. Things are a little bit different in Houston. If you have not heard, Stephon Diggs is there with Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Just don't. If you are tempted to play Dalton Schultz, I strongly encourage you to not only say no, but to get help, because it's just not worth it. So don't be surprised if Dalton Schultz continues to be a sit in future episodes where we're talking starts and sits, because I don't think any of us are really like, yeah, Dalton Schultz is going to be a really good piece this year.
Tyler, I'm sorry about this. My sit of the week.
You said don't worry about.
It's not a guy that you should like necessarily sit unless you have another okay option, but it's Jake Ferguson.
Oh, no.
It's Tyler's flag plant. And the reason is he's going up against the Browns, who gave up the least amount of points to the tight end position all last season. It is not a great matchup. They're not going to score a lot of points in that game. It's in Cleveland. It's disgusting. Like I said, more than likely, you're going to have to start Dalton, or you're going to have to start Jake Ferguson. More than likely, your next best tight end is, if you drafted another one early, is Dalton Schultz. But if we're talking, from a DFS perspective, I would not put Jake Ferguson in my lineup. If you have an Evan Ingram at the same time, go Evan Ingram in this one. If you've got, another David Njoku, even, who I don't even love his matchup, but I would take Njoku over Jake Ferguson this week. I'm sorry, Ty. I know it's disgusting, and I know that's a personal attack on you. And that's truly the only reason I did it, was to attack you. So I would, if you have any ability to, I would stay away from Jake Ferguson. And Ty wants us to wrap it up because he's trying to process how I could say something so heinous against one of his favorite players.
Dude, I was on a high. I was on a buzz because it's week 1 and you just
took him down.
Like, oh, man.
Real quick before we go to Ty, just because some people are going to hear this before the first game of the NFL season. Who do you got? Chiefs, Ravens. Who you taking first game of the season?
I got Jake Ferguson. I got the Chiefs. I
feel like that's the right answer, but I'm going to go with the Ravens because I don't want to see the Chiefs win.
Dude,
and I believe in Derrick Henry.
What? So you call Jake Ferguson a sit, then you just go full contrarian and say the Ravens are going to beat the Chiefs.
Yes.
What happened to you?
Yes.
You're the heel. The Cameron heel turns are back, and I was not prepared for it. I don't like this.
All righty. Well, good luck to all of you. Hopefully you don't have someone in your league who's trying to dampen your moods like I was with Tyler, but good luck week 1. Hopefully, we start out 1-0. You come back next week, listen to Tuesday's recap of week 1 with us, and we're celebrating the comments. That's what we want. That's why we did this episode. So next week, on next week's video, let us know. Are you 1-0? Are you 0-1? Because we want to know. But, Ty's got something to say.
If you have any other start-sit questions, you can, 1, drop them in the comments here below. 2, you can also ask on our Discord page. Absolutely free to join. It's in the description. Or you can join us for our Sunday pre-game lives. We will be live on TikTok. We will be live here on Facebook and YouTube and X as well. You can ask us in any of those ways before kickoff. So don't feel like, if you didn't get your question answered, we won't. There are plenty of opportunities to get it answered.
Yes, sir. No better way to put it. Like I said, we got 3 episodes coming each week. We have a short coming every single day. We have 2 coming on Mondays. So we got 7 6 next week. No, maybe I think 7 next week and 7 every single week after. So 10 full pieces of video content coming out each week, which is just amazing for you guys. So make sure you're subscribed. Turn on those notifications. You can find us Fantasy Football Fellas on YouTube and TikTok. Fantasy Football Fellas Shorts on YouTube. The FFLs on Instagram. FFLs on the X. You can find me at Camel FFF on the X and Tyler at Tyler_Plath. So make sure you go follow us all at all of those socials so you don't miss a single piece of content. But good luck. We will see you next week. Deuces.